Good morning. I'd like to call the May 14th Kankakee County Board meeting to order. Today's invocation is from Ron Kinzinger.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we're back, standing in your presence, and perhaps more appropriately, we should be on our faces. Give us wisdom this day and for this meeting. Nothing more, or it might go to our heads and we think we're greater than we really are. We thank you, Lord, for George Washington, who is not present here today. We ask that you guide and direct and continue to be with him. He's our friend, my friend, and my mentor. Guide him, direct him, and may we do the county business this morning in a manner that will be honoring to you. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. If I could please get a roll call.
Mr. Washington, Mr. Legess,
Present.
Mr. Olthoff,
Present.
Mr. Hess, Mr. Tholen, Mrs. Pope,
Present.
Mr. Snipes, Mr. Byrne, Mr. Seroy,
Present.
Mr. Lear,
Present.
Mrs. Weber,
Present.
Mrs. Peters,
Present.
Mr. Payton,
Present.
Mrs. Parker,
Present.
Ms. Dunbar,
Present.
Mr. Ritter,
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Present.
Mr. Fairfield,
Present.
Mr. Zenz,
Present.
Ms. Haas, Mr. Carrico,
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Present.
Mr. Smith,
Present.
Mr. Swanson,
Present.
Ms. Zakulo,
Present.
Mr. Featherling,
Present.
Mr. Donnell, Mr. Wheeler.
Present. We have a quorum. Under public commentary, we have a few today. We allot 15 minutes, so please, I guess, use your time wisely. The first one is from Barbara, is it Prather or Prather? Regarding motorcycle awareness, right back here at the microphone.
Testing. Yeah, is this on?
Yes.
All right. My name is Barbara Prather. I'm with the GWRRA. I'm the Illinois Assistant District MAP Coordinator, which MAP stands for Motorist Awareness Program. A little bit about us. GWRA started in 1977 and came to be the world's largest touring motorcycle association there is, and we have over 80,000 members through the states and 53 countries. And their motto is Friends for Fun, Safety and Knowledge, and that's what I'm here to talk about, is safety and knowledge regarding motorist awareness. May has been Motorcycle Awareness Month for some time now, and thanks to ABATE, they got that going for us. And I'm just hoping that you'll sign the proclamation and help promote motorist awareness. And just I just want to tell you some of the stats that I have found. I didn't get anything for 19 or 18, but I did see for the county of Kankakee, for 2014, there was 41 accidents with motorcycles, 3 fatal. In 2015, there was 32 accidents, 1 fatal. 2016, there was 28 accidents and 1 fatal. That's through the i.gov. And in total, this county, in total of the state is 3,383 accidents and 22 fatalities. And that's all vehicles, and that's under normal conditions. No drugs, no sleepiness, no alcohol, just regular normal incidents. If you can tell, the county has been going down since 2014 to 2016 of motorcycle accidents. Most of those accidents are either from people crossing in front of us because they can't determine how fast we're going or how if we could stop, and sometimes they say they don't see us. And others will be back-ended. They, run right into us when we're at the stoplight or try and make a turn or something. They'll literally run into us. Matter of fact, I just heard on the news coming here that somebody died from that. And that's senseless. I mean, that could have been preventable if they were just more aware to stop. I mean, this is bicycles too. It's not just motorcycles. Bicyclists, pedestrians. I can't believe how many people walking across the street or just walking are getting killed. I'm trying to promote motorist awareness for everybody that shares the road, not just us motorcyclists, but people that are driving, ATVs, golf carts, imagine that. And if you're going to see a lot more motorcycles coming up, because if they raise the prices of license plates, people can't afford all that. They want to travel, and the gas prices, they're up and down, but it's a lot cheaper with the tanks that we ride than, the 6 and 8 cylinder vehicles, even the 4 cylinders. It's very, I don't know how much more to express that grass clippings, it's like ice. We can't go around it, slow enough, or on it slow enough. Our tires get it gets on the tires, and it could be on our tires for some time down the road. And we have to take extra precautions. Our GWRA organization, or association, I'm sorry, is a not-for-profit, and we're non-religious and non-politics. I mean, we deal with safety, knowledge, friends, and fun. And we try to improve our skills through the whole members. That's what it's about, with, safety and education. I mean, every rally we go to, they always have seminars, classes to teach us a little bit more about how we can be defensive driving, how and what we can do to avoid an accident. Animals, they ride with us too. That's our pets. I mean, they do come with us. We got a little Pomeranian that's a little mascot for one of our chapters. He's so cute. And I see people in cars. They hold them in their lap while they're driving, sticking out the window. They don't have a harness on them. Dogs are in, cats, whatever. They're in jeopardy as well. And that's part of your family. You got to think of, we want to come home to our family too. We're not just gangs, clubs, whatever. We're moms, dads, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, daughters, sons. We want to come home alive. We like to enjoy our freedom, but we want to come home alive. And we're trying to, if you see motorcycles with lights, louder pipes, we're just trying to make people aware of us. And, I can't express it enough that, it is deadly serious for motorcycles to be known out there, and for everybody to share the road with us. And we do free presentations for communities, for driver ed classes. If you need us, we are around. Like I said, we got over 80,000 members in the whole country, including the other countries, 53 out of state. And Illinois, I love our chapter. This is my new family, and I like to ride with them. We're very skilled. We have road captains. We talk to each other on our helmets and microphones. We make sure we let them know what's in the road, what's not, there's a big pothole to avoid it, roadkill. We have to avoid every little thing, little pebbles, gravel. You can't imagine how much attention we as riders on motorcycles are trying to pay attention to, besides the car in front of us or behind us. And that's not including on the side of us. You have blind spots in the car. Do you realize all you have to do is turn your head a little bit and see if something's there? Just like a big truck. There is a lot of dead spots, blind spots, that he cannot see. If you don't see that guy in the mirror, he don't see you. So that's the same thing with cars. If you don't see somebody there, just double take. It doesn't take but a second just to double take. Look twice, save a life. And I always tell some of my friends, you know, put a yard sign up, you know, in your front yard. Just tell somebody that, you know, it might be your life that you're saving, not just ours, but yours. But with motorcycles, there's no basically injuries. I would say it's fatal injuries. You know, people are dying, and we want to come home to our family. You know, I mean, I don't have much left, but my family now is my Goldwing group. And we don't have just Goldwings. We have everything out there from slingshots, if you know what they are. So, that's as much as I can tell you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Rosalie Rigel from Evanston.
Good morning. I'm Rosalie Riegel, and I come here because my faith community, in my faith community, I know so many people who have been in detention, and so I come here to object to the unnecessary detention of immigrants. My friend Margaret Clark will speak about a report about alternative programs. Today, I'm just going to tell you a little story about Izzy, someone who was granted asylum after spending 3.5 months in prison. He says, I remember being on the way to the United States. He had endured death threats and beatings in his home country of Nigeria. He says, I thought I was coming to a place where you could be free and live your life in truth. I thought the environment was welcoming. What I encountered was the opposite. When Izzy left the plane, he entered the visa line. He was pulled out, put into a room, held without anybody saying anything for 6 hours, then shackled and handcuffed and taken in a van with no windows to a detention center. He was there for 3.5 months, and he says, what I learned in jail is that it doesn't matter how strong your case is, how strong you are, you're going to be changed irrevocably, just the same. When we were in jail, we would sit together and share our stories, and the guards would say they would threaten us with solitary confinement for spending too much time talking to each other. But you're changed. You're changed physically, you're changed mentally. He says, you get to a point where you have no memories of a time when there was no suffering in your life. Now, when Izzy was released, when he was granted asylum, he went to the Marie Joseph Detention Center in Chicago, a place where I'm very intimately connected. And from there, he was given the help that he needed to rejoin society, to again pursue his medical degrees. But he said, the injury left by immigration jail is in my heart, and he still gets panic attacks. What would it mean if there were another way? If instead of putting asylum and seeking and immigrants in jail, if they instead went to community support centers, a path that would lead them to good citizenship, it would be more cost effective, it would be more efficient, and ICE has some programs in place like that that are not detention, where they're in homes where they get supportive in government environments. If there was another way, it could change everything. Please do not increase detention in Jerome County. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 minutes left for public comment. Margaret Fayette Clark from Skokie is next.
My name is Margaret Fayette Clark from Skokie, Illinois. We're about 42% of my neighbors are foreign born, and so that's why I'm motivated to get up early and get down here to comment this morning. I'm here to object to the unnecessary detention at Jerome Combs Detention Center. I'd like to call your attention to the report that Rosalie alluded to that was issued by the National Immigrant Justice Center. This report highlights the trauma and pain that detention inflicts on immigrants and describes several successful alternatives to detention, including one in Chicago that Rosalie mentioned, the Marie Joseph House. Studies have shown conclusively that detention is shown to cause trauma. And among the traumas that people endure is poor health and poor nutrition. A young Honduran man that I met recently who'd been arrested in Texas and moved to 5 different detention centers, the last being he was held here at Jerome Combs, he reported that the amount of food he received here was less than at any other detention center. The NIJC report outlines the work of the Marie Joseph House operated by the Interfaith Community for Detained Immigrants. This program provides food and shelter for immigrants and asylum seekers. It directs them to services to help them with their experience of torture and trauma. It accompanies them to court and to ICE check-ins. It is a cheaper, kinder, and a more effective way at supporting asylum seekers and immigrants while ensuring that they comply with immigration laws. In the concluding remarks of this report, NIJC reports that a national assessment of the U.S. mass immigration of immigrants shows this approach to be radically anti-immigrant and wasteful. I'd like to share the rest of this report with you by email. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Julia McDonald from Kankakee.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick. I'm the one that put the booklets on your desk. I hope everybody got one. If you, looks like I missed your, I'll get you guys. So this is a booklet that is the project of Connect Kankakee, and I'm here speaking on behalf of that group today. We come every month, so you pretty much know who we are, and we've been involved in immigrant rights advocacy around here, and at higher levels of government as well. We had an immigration symposium in April, and this booklet was handed out or distributed there. Chairman Wheeler was there, Sheriff Downey was there. It was very nice to, I was not there, I was out of town, but we had some other speakers. And then the Daily Journal did a little article. So I thought I'd follow up on that and just read a few of the things that were said at the symposium. And I do want to preface this by saying that I appreciate Sheriff Downey, and I appreciate the work that of local law enforcement. I do think that there should be a criminal justice system. Just because I speak out against ICE tactics doesn't mean that I think we should jettison the criminal justice system. One thing that Sheriff Downey said, let's see, at the symposium, was he acknowledged that this is a national issue. He said, quote, "This is a national issue that needs to be handled in Washington, D.C., and I'm willing to work to get that to happen. It's a local issue, but it's a local issue because it's a national issue. But it takes more than the sheriff of Kankakee County or the chairman of the county board to make that happen." Is that an accurate quote, Sheriff? Just making sure. Okay, I'm just reading from the article in the paper. So I know there's been some issues with that. But I'm reading from this, and I just wanted to address that we know that as well. Like, our group is, we're not just showing up here every month without the knowledge that this is something that happens at many different levels of government. We actually have met with the head of in the House, the Homeland Security Oversight Committee, Benny Thompson, who comes out of, Representative Benny Thompson, who comes out of Mississippi. We've met with him. We've discussed things with him and Robin Kelly at roundtable discussions. We have a conference call with her office today. I mean, we're really trying at that national level as well. We're not just thinking it's going to happen down here. We also are involved at the state level, and there's a a slew of legislation that has that is going through the House and the Senate as we speak. So we're also involved at the state level. But I do think that at a local level here, we have a little more control than what is being acknowledged. So another quote.
Ms. McDonald, I'm sorry, you have to address the board. You can't question people.
Okay, sorry, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And we are over, so is there anybody who wants to make a motion to extend?
I have like two.
Mr. Fairfield, motion to extend?
Yes.
For how long?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Is there a second to that? Go with Mr. Legess. He looks like he's engaged. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. We'll go
Thank
to
you.
926.
Okay. Thank you. So, Sheriff, again, the quote that I'm reading from the Daily Journal, quote, "The ICE inmates are not here because we put them there. It was an ICE decision. I'm following the law." So I just wanted to address that. I do think that we have more control. We're not just following the law as far as our involvement with holding people at the Jerome Combs Detention Center. That was a choice that the sheriff made. He made that choice to hold the detainees here. It's not something that came down from above him. And I don't know if he discussed that with the board. I think it should be a discussion with everyone here. So, I mean, I guess I just feel like this has been, it keeps getting kind of shoved away, like this is not something we can do at this level. And I disagree. I really feel like small government has a lot of control. We have a lot of influence, even at a national level. Another quick thing that came up at the symposium was the issue of public trust. And this again goes back to my appreciation of local law enforcement, and that and even Jim Rowe seconded this, despite many of the protective policies in place in Illinois, families continue to be afraid to seek police protection. We already have a difficult time getting witnesses to come forward for violent crimes in this county. So just layering on top of that, the idea that our immigrant population is feeling marginalized and fearful. Please look into something called the 287G agreements and talk to your sheriff about his feelings on that. This is not to get too complicated, but there is something that can be done at a local level that deputizes local law enforcement to become ICE agents. And our group, Connect Kankakee, is fearful that that will happen here in this county, and we don't want that to happen. So please do your research on what that would mean, not only talking to your sheriff, but looking into what the 287G agreements would be. And lastly, thank you for reading through my little booklet here. On the last page, the question is, acknowledging the fact that revenue is an issue, but is taking money from ICE the best plan for Kankakee long-term to encourage long-term growth? Advocacy for immigration policy reform is at its height. This will affect the federal budget for ICE and its expensive mass detention agenda. So ask our sheriff and county chairman to account for the costs of holding detainees for ICE, hold them accountable for real answers to the question of what happens when we no longer have undocumented immigrants to imprison. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb Barron from Scenic Riverview, Kankakee.
Some of us would maintain the prettiest part of Kankakee County.
I would agree.
I'm here this morning to talk to you about Project SUN. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. And so I wanted to let you know a little bit about one of our newest initiatives. SUN stands for Strengthening and Unifying Our Network. We're about promoting the behavioral health and well-being of the children of our county. We are a new initiative funded through the Illinois Children's Healthcare Foundation to the Kankakee, the Community Foundation of Kankakee River Valley. And what we are dealing with are over 1,000 children in our county who have been assessed for mental health services and receive services from at least 2 providers to help make sure those services are connected and coordinated. But we also find that there are a lot more children in the county who have not been assessed for mental health services that need them. And there are three main reasons why not. One is that often the family does not know the resources that are available in the county, and we're trying to address that through improving the Can I Help Information Network. It's an online information system that I hope you all are familiar with. If you've used it before, I hope you found it useful, but it will be even better when the improvements are made in it that we hope will be done by the end of this month, if not the end of June. Another reason is that parents can't afford the services that are available, and we will be working not necessarily through new grants to provide those services, but helping to ensure that all of the service providers in the county, the private and the public, are bringing in all of the third-party payments that they can, helping the individual counselors keep current with all of the insurance changes that are going on, as well as whatever other resources we can bring in. And a third reason that people can't access the children's mental health services that we need is the workforce. There aren't enough people out there. Part of that is that pay is low for the training and everything that they have to do. We have one pediatric psychiatrist to serve the entire county. And so another part of our initiative is to promote people going into the behavioral health services, as well as to try and see that the compensation is there for them after they've made the investment to be in that profession. A real shortage that we have is with counselors of color, as well as Spanish-speaking counselors. So those are some things that we will be promoting. We also will be having a community summit at the end of this month, May 28th. We will have an evening session from 5:30 to 8 o'clock, and an all-day session on Wednesday, May 29th. Jackie Haas will be sending you information about that if she hasn't gotten it out yet. We hope that some of you will be able to attend either the evening session or the day-long session to learn more about the system of care that we want to put in place. What is a little bit different about it than what we have currently is that it is intended to be family and youth driven, so that the families who are receiving services really are in the driver's seat, sitting with the providers and planning the care for their families. So I look forward to seeing you on May 28th or 29th, and I appreciate the fact that you will be considering a resolution today to support Mental Health Awareness Month. Thank you.
Thank you. We're over. Is there an extension for another 3 minutes? We have one more. We have one more person extend for 3 minutes. Mr. Eckhoff, Mr. Snipes, all those in favor? Those opposed? All right, noted. The last person is Ron Hansen from Bourbonnais.
Good morning, all, and I promise to say a lot more in a lot less time. My subject today is the legalization of high-potency marijuana, realizing this board isn't going to be voting on it, but realizing you're all public officials, you all have access to the press, to just more publicity than an average citizen can get. I'm here to encourage you to speak out against the legalization of it. And I wish I'd made copies for everybody, but I have 10 reasons in an article from the Illinois Family Institute, which are backed up scientifically. If you go to their website, you can see the 10 reasons. You can get a lot more backup to what I'm going to give you. But this is important. It's going to affect Illinois, not just in the short term, but in the long term. We think alcohol causes problems. Alcohol is a food-based product. It goes into the system, it goes out rather rapidly. THC is not a food-based product. It goes into the system, it stays much longer, it causes much more damage. And this is something that needs to be considered. Do we know what we're doing and why we're doing it? Reason number one, increased THC levels. This isn't the marijuana that most of us grew up with, and I've never tasted it, so I wouldn't know. And it's going to go into other products, oil, wax, dab, and shatter, whatever that is, at much higher concentrations. The marijuana being grown now is about 15% more potent, or 15 times, I should say. Number 2, increased risk of psychosis, and even more alarming is youth suicide. And again, this is all backed up. Number 3, increased marijuana-related hospitalizations and poison control center calls. Number 4, increased marijuana-related exposures in children 0 to 5 years old. 0 to 5 years old. Number 5, increased violent crime in legalized states. Well backed up, well documented. Number 6, increased and potential serious brain alteration. I don't know about you, but I'm still using my brain. I'm 78 years old. I intend to use it for a lot longer, and everybody should be concerned about this. Number 7, increased heroin and opioid deaths in Illinois after medical marijuana. Number 8, premature aging of the brain. Number 9, increased marijuana-related traffic fatalities. You know, we have trouble with alcohol. How about something that may stay in the system 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days longer? Increased social and economic costs outweigh tax revenue by $4.50 to every $1. And as they're experiencing in Colorado, the illegal growers move in and take over the legal production. So that's all I have to say. I hope you take it seriously, and I hope you all consider speaking out. Letters to the editor, calls to the governor, calls to our state representative, calls to the state senator. You know, Illinois doesn't have a revenue problem where we need to bring on an addictive drug. Illinois has a spending problem, and that's what you guys need to be addressing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on. Communications presentations. We have a proclamation declaring May as Motorcycle Awareness Month. If we could we read that into the record, please?
Sure. Proclamation of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, declaring May as Motorcycle Awareness Month. Whereas motorcycle enthusiast organizations continually promote motorcycle safety, education, and awareness programs to the general public and to the motorist community of Illinois. And whereas motorcycle riding is a popular form of recreation and transportation for thousands of people across the state and nation. And whereas it is crucial that the citizens of our city and state be aware of motorcycles on the roadways and recognize the importance of motorcycle safety. And whereas state and motorcycle organizations across this country will be conducting a variety of activities to promote motorist awareness and safely sharing the road with motorcycles, and will be reminding riders to be more visible to others. And whereas the motorcyclists of Illinois have contributed countless volunteer hours to their communities, and therefore Kankakee County does hereby proclaim May 2019 as Motorcycle Awareness Month and encourage motorcycle awareness and safe motoring for all.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve that? Mr. Zenz, that'd be a second for Ms. Polk. Does anyone have any comment on this before we do a vote on it? I know that you had something, I think, Mr. Zenz, if you want to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciated the young lady's comments earlier regarding Motorcycle Awareness Month. I guess what I want to say is just basically we gotta start giving motorcyclists space and time. Give them some space and time. These are people's family, like she mentioned. Last week, at the end of the week, a 17-year-old young man lost his life in Northwest Indiana while pulling in his motorcycle into his driveway. The driver that hit him stated he didn't see him. My condolences go out to Clayton's parents who are from the Kankakee County area, as well as to the many family and friends, as well as friends of ours, the Patnods and Bartons. So I encourage everybody to vote aye for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that May is dedicated to safety awareness for motorcycles, but I hope the community take it further and make it all the time instead of just 1 month.
Thank you. Anyone else? No, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Ms. Parker, we have a kind of a ceremonial if you want to give it to your constituent. We'll give it to you for after. You don't have to come up and get it. We'll just send it off to the side. So you had a constituent who put this forward, wanted us to do this, so we'll send that with you. Moving on, we have a proclamation in recognition of Mental Health Awareness Month. We could read that one to the record, please.
Proclamation of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, in recognition of Mental Health Awareness Month. Whereas the mental health of every citizen is essential to the emotional and economic prosperity of our families, communities, and businesses. And whereas mental health is a key component of every individual's overall physical health and emotional well-being. And whereas mental illness affects people of all ages, races, ethnicities, and income levels in our communities. And whereas suicide is the 11th leading cause of death overall in Illinois. And whereas mental health conditions are not only common, they are treatable, and early and effective intervention can save lives and change the trajectories of people living with mental illness. And whereas only 50% of individuals with a serious form of mental illness seek treatment. And whereas feelings of personal shame and fears of social stigma and discrimination prevent many living with mental illness from seeking help. And whereas stigma leads to fear, mistrust, and violence against people with mental illness, who are significantly more likely to be victims rather than perpetrators of violent crimes. And whereas stigma can be reduced by increasing the awareness and education of mental illness and available resources for those suffering from mental health conditions. And whereas we strive to create communities that support mental wellness by increasing access to treatment, educating ourselves and our communities about mental wellness and mental illness, and supporting our citizens as they seek to improve their mental health. And whereas greater public awareness about mental wellness can positively transform attitudes about and towards people with mental illness, making it easier for our citizens to seek help. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Kankakee County Board that it recognizes the struggle many county residents have with mental illness and recognize the month of May as Mental Health Awareness Month.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve this? Mr. Carrico, second, Mr. Lear. Any comments about this proclamation? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll save that for Jackie, maybe. Alrighty, moving on. I have a presentation from Carol Weber, County Board Member. Turn on your mic.
I thank you, Mr. Wheeler. I would like our Executive Coordinator, please, to stand up, Miss Kelly.
On the spot.
Dear Kelly, thank you for preparing our support materials for our county board and our committee meetings and emailing them to us with the agendas. Thank you, Kelly, for your orderly arrangement of papers and signature pages at our meetings. Thank you, Kelly, for the efficient preparation of the minutes and for sending them to us so quickly. You are kind and helpful and talented. And on my behalf, I'm giving you these flowers. Stay standing, just to show you how efficient she is. She filled in our answer pages today when we were here. So what I'd like to do as a last comment, please, if you have any thank you for Kelly, I have a thank you card for you to sign. So I'm going to put one at each row, and please sign thanks to Kelly, and I'll pick them up. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly.
Mr. Giuliani, county didn't pay for those, Ms.
No,
Weber did, just so you know.
Flower fund.
Had to clearly state what needed to be said.
Yeah.
No, we do appreciate it. We get minutes the day after the meetings, and that's remarkable. We do appreciate it. I have another presentation. This is something that I had asked Anita and Steve to kind of get together because of the way that they're handling IMRF now. A lot of people don't really know what's coming in the future if you don't really pay attention closely to the details. And we had I saw a situation, I couldn't quantify the situation, what it meant to Kankakee County, so we basically, what are you guys, are spending about a month and a half on this, working on these numbers to kind of show the impact of all of these changes and what it means to our county in terms of our IMRF. And that includes SLEP, ECO, you know, all the tiers and, you know, the regular IMRF. So, yeah, please, you guys have the floor. Let me turn your mics on here. All right, you should be good.
So over the last month to 6 weeks, Steve and I have been working together on this, and we actually last week went to, on Monday, went and listened to IMRF discuss. There's really 3 different things. It's last year's performance is having a dramatic impact on us, the next year's rates and those estimated rates, and then a change in assumption by IMRF for their investment returns has a dramatic impact on us. So we're going to talk about essentially those 3 things as we walk through it. One, on an overall level, what's coming from IMRF, but then specifically how it impacts us.
All right. The first slide we wanted to share with you came directly from IMRF in that meeting. And point of clarification, really, I think there is confusion a lot of times when we talk about changes. As this slide identifies, the member reserve on the left, by statute, IMRF has to keep that 100% funded. So that's our employee reserve. And on the right, the 100% funded status, annuitant is the retirees. So that stays. So when we're talking about any changes with IMRF, changes to Kankakee County, it's the middle fund. They keep all these funds separate, and they call that one the employer reserve. So that's the county's reserve that we are discussing today as far as the change.
So this is our 2018 employer reserve statement here. You can see the top, but I just lumped each one of those 3 plans has several different funds underneath it. In the past, we've had some early retirements. Those numbers are kept separate, both under regular and SLEP. And under SLEP, there were some enhancements to the SLEP plan back in the early 90s. And so the cost of that is kept separate. But for simplicity's sake, I lumped all 3 of them into just the 3 plans. So regular, ECHO, and SLEP. So the interest on opening balance, and that is one of the assumptions that IMRF makes, is their 7.5% interest income. So you can see that as a credit if your opening balance, it's always on your opening balance from the prior year. So what we pay during the year doesn't matter. It's January 1st is where we earn our interest or a charge. So look at ECHO, how that's a negative balance, that's an interest charge. So you get charged 7.5%. Then the next line is employer contributions. In total, we made $4.2 million last year in 2018 in payments, either as for ECHO or for regular and SLEP, it's as a percentage of payroll dollars. And for ECHO, because we have no current employees on there, so no payroll dollars to tax, so to speak, it's actually a flat amount every month, about $32,000, $33,000 a month. The residual investment income is huge. So last year, IMRF lost, like their loss on investment income was 4.25%. We're going to get to actual dollars in a little bit, but they take that number plus the cost of that 7.5% line, and then they distribute it out. Now, the way that's calculated is you add all our accounts balances up, the 34 million, the -4, and the $8 million. And that as a percentage of all 3,000 employers in the state, it's all allocated proportionately based on how big our reserves are compared to the investment total, to the total balances they have. Miscellaneous corrections tend to happen if there's maybe an error in a wage report. Most often it comes like when we have a late payout to a retiree, like 60 days later when we pay sick leave or whatever, it creates an adjustment. That's what those are there. Member annuities. Now this is where Steve talked about the annuity fund. So at the end of the year, there were 20 retirees in 2018. So by plan, what IMRF does is says at the day you retire, what they estimate the cost of your retirement to be. They charge this fund and they put it into that annuitant fund. So that's what that charge is for. And you can see our ending balances at the end. Now, bottom line, my concern is especially with SLEP. If you look at that SLEP employer reserve, we went from a funded balance or a fund balance of 7.8 million down to 1.4. The issue becomes if that flips negative, instead of a 7.5% interest charge or income on that first line, it's going to be a charge. And then what you see happening is what you see happening with ECHO. It really is hard to come back out of that hole.
So if this is like drinking from a fire hose, please, it is. You'll be able to see some, as you follow through this, the numbers start to become more clear as they start to step through this. This is like the full on blast, and the next few slides, they'll make it more clear.
So the graph here, directly from IMRF, identifies what their actual rate of return has been since 1982 through 2018. The 2018 number is probably pretty small for those of you to see, was the negative 4.25% investment return. The dotted line going through there is their assumed rate of return. So back in the 80s, their assumed rate of return was 7%. 93, it changed to 7.5%. And then that we're part of what we're talking about right now that'll affect our 2020 is they're dropping it from 7.5% to 7.25%. So that adjustment for the assumed rate of return as well as the investment loss combined is what's affecting us for 2020. So they took their explanation of the change was taking the averages of the times that they exceed the rate of return and the times that it falls below. So the last few years you can see that they've had a number of years at or below the rate of return. The other important note that we've been dealing with since 2008, when that was nearly a 25% loss, the largest loss. This is the single largest that we have had to absorb since 2008. The county voted to take a 5-year phase-in repayment plan for that loss that year. Some of you may remember that in that discussion. And you'll see as we continue some of the impact that year had on us. Not only the economic impact, but that also affected the IMRF.
So the two pieces, that 4.25 overall IMRF, that was a $1.6 billion loss, was their loss on investment. They had a fund balance, total funds of maybe close to 42 billion. So 1.6 billion was the charge for the interest loss, their investment loss. In addition, that 7.5% credit costs another 2.68 billion. So a total of $4.4 billion in charges were allocated across to all the employers. So while IMRF will tell you, well, it was only a 4.5% loss, that's really just a portion of the story. This is a lot, but what I kind of wanted to show here is really the total interest. And by the way, I had these numbers when we went to the meeting last week, and I talked to the IMRF CFO after the meeting, and I said, am I looking at this correctly? I don't want to misconstrue. And he went through the numbers and says, yes, you're absolutely correct. So you get the 7.5, the annuitant reserve, the employer reserve, that total of 75 million on the top line there, That's what that distribution of a loss of 15.54, that was our share of that, allocated to all our funds was. So that's a total of, you know, I don't know how many. In total interest and charges, if you add those two columns together, the 7.5% plus the residual distribution, that's a cost of $16.14 million to us. So the interest and charges on the regular plan, 12.2%, on SLEP, 14.17%, and on ECHO, 25%. Happy?
So here's a summary slide that IMRF provided, showing the drop in the assumed rate of return as the top number, going from 7.5% to 7.25%, which in turn, then again, these are IMRF averages. Their employer contribution rate average in 2019 was just over 9%, and just dropping the assumed rate of return changed the average contribution rate from 9% to almost 11%, is the bottom graph there depicting that. So yeah, what we did, was dropped in our rates as compared to the IMRF rates, the averages, and you can see that starting in 2013, that our rates on average became higher than the average IMRF rate.
Could you explain the stars on there so they can tell them what the stars mean so they can?
Okay.
Yeah.
The stars are actually our rates compared to the other rates, the actual bars. That's the average IMRF employer rate. So what Steve's talking about is that 5-year phase-in. Look what happened in 2013 when that phase-in ended. That, number one, that can be one issue. Then we went above the average. The other thing is, as we had layoffs and lowered our salary dollars, remember this is a percentage of salary dollars. So if you have to pay the piper. So if the salaries you're paying on are less, your percentage goes up. So what we did then was took a look at what the increase is. Those at the top show the increase in the rates. There's a almost 9% increase in our regular rate. There's a 20.6% in our SLEP rate for next year, year over year. So there's some theory at the bottom here. What I did was take the reportable earnings for 2018, and then I don't have, obviously, 2019 reportable wages yet because we're halfway through the year, right? So I took 2018, bumped it up by 2.5% on average. For SLEP, I included an extra 2 for their steps to try and get to 2019. Then that 2019 level, took it up an extra 2.5% for 2020 to say that 2020 estimatable reportable earnings would be like 24 million for regular, 4 million for SLEP. So then if you take the reportable earnings times the 2019 and the 2020 rate, it tells you what the difference is just based on the rate increase. So that increase just on the rate increase will cost us estimated about $475,000. And IMRF did tell us, again, 75% of the increase is due to their assumed rate of return reduction. So if you take 75% of it, 355,000 of it is due to the drop from 7.5% to 7.25%.
All right, we're switching off here a little bit. You might question why there was a rate-setting EAV history part of this discussion. And with the tax caps, the pension fund is our locally funded, our fund that we use to pay the IMRF, the employer portion of the IMRF. So the connection here, because of the tax cap, the rate-setting EAV is probably one of the most important factors to the tax cap and our ability to absorb changes like this. And you can see what's happened. Not only was it a bad investment, but the economic change, as we all know, to EAVs took place. Now, if we go to the next slide, you'll see a direct correlation. Our pension fund year-end balance history is following that almost identically. And it's related to the tax cap issue. So we currently have available about $580,000 as of the end of 2018 is what that number indicates, to utilize and to help absorb as the previous fund balance helped us absorb the changes, not only EAB, but also the rate changes, as you saw the spike that went up in the previous for our employer rates going forward. So the other important note, some say, well, can we just raise the tax levy just to cover this? And the answer to that is not exactly. And we listed all the funds that are within the tax cap that compete, if you will, for the total dollars. So you have the general fund, the tort fund, the pension fund, 3 different highway funds for 3 different purposes, the health department, the U of I extension, and the Veterans Assistance Commission. So all are important activities, functions within the county, and all of these have to share a slice of the pie, if you will, because of the tax cap. So we just wanted to remind everybody that that's why, with all these restrictions and everybody coming to the table, it's a very difficult thing to distribute when you get a large impact like what we're seeing.
So if something goes up, something's got to come down.
Yeah. Right.
That's the end result of that.
Right.
So we know it's a lot of numbers, and I don't expect anybody to remember any of them. Steve and I live them every day, so it kind of starts to roll off our tongues. But what we want you to get from all of this. So in 2018, the interest charges to the pensions plans were 12, 14, and 25%, resulting in a 10 to 15% reduction in our funded percentage in our plans. And if you pay that assumed payroll percentage every year, what you're assigned from IMRF, it's like paying the minimum balance on your credit card. Yes, you're complying, but are you going to pay more in interest in the end? Yes, you will.
Yeah, and then just repeating that we have limited options, to make the additional payments and to absorb, a change like this. And so that's what we wanted to share with you. The next year's levy and budget is not done yet, but we'll share that with finance as we get closer to that time frame. We plug all this information in going forward.
This was something that I thought was more important than just talking to finance about it, because it really shapes a lot of policy that the whole board will be dealing with over the next year. Now, I don't know if there's any more slides or not. Was that the last one? I mean, if you're tax capped, what are you sitting here hoping? Or you're hoping that the stock market keeps going up.
Correct.
Because if it doesn't, if it goes down, it gets worse.
Right.
Because we got killed by those investments. On this, and then that's when it made them change the assumption. I'm assuming there was a correlation between the two. But
if I could add, what they shared at the meeting was it was the fourth quarter of 2018 that actually changed the investments. Mm-hmm. And they reported that right now they're up about 8%, but as of yesterday, that probably changed.
Right.
That probably changed yesterday.
That's exactly
Mr. Kinzinger, question?
Yes, I serve on a private pension board, so it's not public, but private pension board. And we experienced the same type of revenue loss in 2018, which hopefully was an anomaly for the time period that was chosen. But there's a fluctuation in terms of the funded percentage necessary to have a viable pension fund. And I'm not certain how the public works, but if we have an 8% return this year and a 9% return, which is possible as a 6% return, how does that impact all these numbers?
And he can give you a better example, but you can see all those years we paid more than what the assumption was. We built up a balance, but when EAV drops, we're fighting against the tax cap, and all of that situation, because we just can't raise to capture that. So I know that's a simplistic answer, but you may be able to get more specific.
Well, and part of the issue is that 7.5%. One of the things I had talked to them in prior years about is, let's say it is only 6%, right? Their assumed rate of return is 7.5%, and they're going to credit everybody 7.5%. Well, if they only make 6%, that means the residual, residual investment has to get charged another 1.5%. So anything below their 7.5% assumed, it kind of compounds.
But I heard that they lowered that a quarter to 7.25%, which seems
Right.
realistic.
Yep.
What if it's 8 or 9?
Then what happens is, and I've seen this happen in other, I'm trying to think back, I think I have 2017 here. Then that residual, you'll see that as long as your employer statement balance is positive, you could get an extra couple points there and it can turn back around.
That's what
Right.
I thought. Thank you.
That was my comment about everybody hope the stock market keeps going
That's
up.
exactly right.
That's because that's our
Now, we're
only.
gloom and doom, but we can look at the negative or we can think positive and do what we can to improve the situation.
Right.
Thank you.
But in 2020, we have to make sure we meet those obligations, or then it flips,
Gotcha.
and then we start getting down that eco, where there's nobody paying into eco now, and that hole just will keep getting deeper as those people are on retirement. So anyway, you got anything else, Steve?
I don't.
Any other questions, Mr. Snipes?
Even giving this dim view, IMRF is still the safest and probably one of the most best ran pension funds in the state of Illinois. So it has its ups and downs, and we hope that for the most part they make some great decisions, but we don't know sometimes how the economy will fluctuate. But for the most part, they have made some what I consider to be some incredible investments that safeguards the pension plan. So with that being said, or whatever, I know that there's looks like there's a downside, but the positive side is they're still in Illinois one of the most safest pension plans to be in, considering the teachers plan and some of the others that are out there.
It is the best funded. The difference is IMRF, the employers, because of the way that interest charge works, there's no deferring anything. And so they take whatever funded balance you are or what the issue is, they do their actuarial assessment going out 30 years, and then the employer starts paying immediately, right? So there's no deferrals, and you've heard about some of those that happened previously in some of the other pension funds where the payments were made. That's not allowed in IMRF.
My problem is the 7.5 down to 7.25. I think that was extremely short-sighted by IMRF, and it's really put a hurt on a lot of counties in the state. I've been in conversations with a lot of the chairmen, and that's one of the reasons, 2-3 months ago we asked to start on this, because it's devastating to those counties that are really large counties with a lot of employees. I mean, it's amazing, because obviously nobody has enough money to run operations anymore. So it's we're kind of in the middle of the pack, and we're feeling it. Just as we're climbing out of the hole, we get smacked down with another $500,000 we got to come up with. So Mr. Kinzinger. Yeah.
The county has to respond to IMF. Do we have any way of saying, one of the things we look at in pension fund is how do we affect benefit payments to retirees? Does the county have any input in terms of how we look at the retirement plans of various individuals, or is that run by typically the state?
It's state law.
State laws. So the only way we can change that is through state law change.
Right.
And that's where our problem
Right. The last time that happened was January 1st of 2011, and that's tier 2, what's called tier 2, right? And they're much less lucrative. There's like the retirement age before you take a reduction. So you can retire early, like let's say, I think on regular it's 60. I think it went from age 55 to 60, but you get a reduction of 0.25% of what you would have gotten for every year below 67. There were a lot of changes in that way, not so much the percentage, but that had to do with deferring and ensuring that people worked longer.
More to come, I guess, on this once we get the levy and everything worked out and see how that impacts. We may have to shift some things towards the pension and figure out where we're going to pull it away from. So that's work we have to do. Alrighty, moving on. Thank you both very much for that.
Indeed. Leave it there.
Alright, break for lunch? No, I'm just kidding. Certifications of recognition. I have 25 years, Brent Laird with the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff, do you want to do all these? They're all sitting right in front of you there.
Yeah, I see them.
Okay.
Gotta get my notes out. We got a lot of them today.
Yeah, we do. Don't cut yourself on the paper.
Didn't know we'd be here an hour. All right. Thank you, everybody, for giving us this opportunity to recognize our employees, because I know that you know, sometimes they don't get the recognition they deserve. So this is a good place for us. Our first recipient for 25 years, and the way he looks, he started when he was about 12, is Brent Laird. Brent Laird is a corporal, currently in charge of security at the courthouse, and has done a number of things throughout his career here, including being one of the initial members of the ERT team, which actually, a short, quick thing, they have ERT training today, which they don't dress like this normally for ERT training. So he went to ERT training this morning, went home, changed his clothes, got in uniform for this, and then he's going to go back home, put back his ERT stuff, and go back to training. So he actually got an hour reprieve from the meeting. So he's also a firearms instructor, one of our firearms instructors. As you all know, we're required to train with firearms, mandatory every year. He's one of our better firearms instructors. If he can have patience with me, you know he's pretty good. So he's also been involved with KMEG, and as I said, the courthouse supervisor. So we're glad to have him. We hope he sticks around for quite a while, although I've heard rumors. But, so Brent, congratulations.
Next we have for 20 years, Edward Zoff.
20 years seems like 20 years for Ed. You know, best story I can tell you about Eddie Zoff as a deputy, his relationship with our community is what makes us all look good, including you guys. He has such an ability to talk to people. As some of you know, sometimes too much, but that's a good thing. He can, you know, we have a call for a complaint. By the time he's done talking, it's all resolved, and the person normally thanks us for doing what we do. So we're glad to have Ed. He is recently in January a chief, and actually, since he's been here an hour, he's actually assigned to the road today, because we do utilize our lieutenants and chiefs as road deputies when we're short, and he is on the road today, so I do have to get him out of here fairly quickly. But for 20 years, Ed, congratulations. Thank you.
Also for 10 years at the Sheriff's Department, Amy Lukey.
For those of you that don't know Amy, I'm trying to be kind when I say this. She's like mom with the money. When we go and we're trying to purchase things we need, normally we go through Amy, and a lot of times she says, no, we can't do it because we can't afford it. So, but she does a great job with our finances. Amy came here 10 years ago when it was obvious that we were generating a lot of revenue, and how we got that revenue. I know she works very closely with Steve and the finance department, and she really does a great job for us, and we're glad we have her. So for 10 years. last but not least, at least for me.
We also have
Grant?
some from corrections.
I got Grant Jackson. Yes, one from corrections is here.
Okay.
Grant has been with us 15 years. Whoa. So yeah, I'm telling you, Grant, for those of you that probably some of you who've been on the board for a while probably know his father, Grant, who was Ed, who was a chief deputy for us years ago, and if you wouldn't know any different, you'd think they were twins. I have to look twice sometimes myself, but so Grant grew up around law enforcement. He's been with us for 15 years, and as he rose through the ranks from a corporal to a sergeant, he is also one of those guys that is very good with computers and software. And as we have evolved into a technological, more of a technological job with doing all of our computer stuff on the corrections side, and some of the numbers that you guys get in the criminal justice meetings, some of those things are all compiled and because of our computer system that Grant is very involved in. He is also.
Yeah, you can finish this and then we're going to have to take a pause.
Oh.
Yeah.
He is also registers all the registered sex offenders in Kankakee County as well. So any sex offender that comes into our county who has to register with us, Grant takes care of that and makes sure that the sex offenders are complying with the rules that are set forth by the court. So for 15 years, Grant, it doesn't seem that long, but congratulations. I have two others who are actually working in the jail that it's easier for them to come off the road than it is come out of the jail. So I will make sure they get their certificate.
Thank you. And that was Adam Memiga for 10 years and Robert Lamore for 10 years out in corrections. While we get the stream together, thank you. I'd like to call the meeting back to order for May 14th. We had a loss of the television or the iPhone stream, if you will. So we're back going here, hopefully for the rest of the meeting. Just want to make note, Mr. Roltoff did leave the premises. Elvis has left the building, so he's the only one that has not returned. Alrighty, we got through the certificates of recognition, so I'm moving on to the minutes of the last meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Mr. Lejeune, second. Mr. Featherling, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Under Claims Committee reports, can I get a motion to approve the claims from Mr. Ritter, second, from Mr. Fairfield? If we could just read those briefly.
Mr. Chairman and members of the County Board, your Committee on County Claims would beg leave to report they have examined the following claims presented and recommend payment. The clerk is hereby authorized and directed to issue orders to the several claimants payable out of the funds as follows.
Got it. You're good.
General Fund, $1,090,124.30. All other funds, $4,686,646.79, for a total for the month of March 2019, $5,776,771.09. For the Highway Fund, $221,377.17. All other funds, $284,097.55. For a total for the month of March 2019, $505,474.72.
All right, we have a motion and a second. That will be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lejeune.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakula.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under department reports, if we could get those read into the record, please.
County Collector's report for monthly report for March 2019. Total cash in bank and investments, $783,014.71. County Treasurer's monthly report for March 2019. Total cash and investments, $783,014.71. Finance Department balance sheet, total checking accounts and cash, total of $11,062,732.09. In the general fund, a deficit balance of $4,152,710.06. Coroner's monthly report for March of 2019. Total calls 130, coroner's cases 14, autopsy 7, toxicology 8, outside autopsies 3, 2 x-rays, 68 cremations. Total fees of $4,393.28. Circuit Clerk cash book for March of 2019, total disbursed of $456,245.18. Kankakee County Recorder's monthly report for March 2019, disbursement fees paid to the county treasurer, $92,478.92. County Clerk's monthly report for March of 2019, total fees of $47,743.79. The Kankakee County Animal Control Report for March of 2019, total of $22,894.25. In the IPTIP Building Fund, $100,527.04. Total animals handled, 46. The monthly Building Division Report for March 2019, total permits of 52, fees of $181,777. Total extra fees of $2,820 for a grand total of $184,597. Monthly resolution list for May of 2019, total of the county of $5,985.
Thank you. And to those department heads mentioned. Motion to combine and accept these reports as presented. Mr. Fairfield, second. Mr. Kulo, any questions? That'll be a voice vote. Do you have a question, Mr. Lear?
So much a question, but just a comment. A little bit of a celebration as we read that building report fees. Clearly, we're seeing the impact of the CSL outbuild and in those fees. So that's a little one small portion of the celebration of how our finances are improving.
Sure. Thank you for that. All right, that will be a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Under the consent agenda, is there anything that needs to be removed to be considered separately? Give you a moment to look through those. It's not that long this time. Mr. Snipes?
Looking at 73, just only to see if we're going to update that April to May. That's my only concern. In the contract, it says April, and I think you're just going to make the effective date of today. Then I don't have to take it off. The settlement agreement is just the effective of April.
Yeah, this is the agreement that was sent around to the parties. We can change that to May easily enough. That's not a concern.
That's the only concern.
So leave it on?
Yeah, just leave it on. Just change the date.
Any others that need to come off? Alrighty. I guess I need a motion to combine and accept the consent agenda. Mr. Payton, second, Mrs. Parker. If we could read those into the record, please.
Resolution naming the Sheriff's Administration Building the Timothy F. Bukowski Administration Building. Resolution adopting an amended stormwater ordinance.
If I could, please, I'm sorry. There's no dot next to that. That has been removed from this agenda. You have it out here. It says remove per Dell for next month. I apologize for that. I did not make that note. Is it on your copy of the agenda? Okay, I'm removing that. I apologize. It's on my copy, but it's not ready yet. We had a couple of changes. We got to go back to PZA. So there is no number on it here. Is there a number on it on theirs? Okay, that has been removed. I apologize for that. So do we still have the motion in the second to combine and approve?
It's not. That's what I've got on.
What's that?
I just got what I'm just reading what's on the agenda.
Yep.
The corrected name is in the paperwork. The corrected name on the Public Safety Center is in the paperwork. We had a typo on the initial one, so it's the correct one is on the resolution. But again, that resolution on stormwater is going back to PZA. Is the motion in the second still okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, sorry about that.
Authorizing the county board chairman to sign an agreement with EDF Renewable Energy. Appointment of Joseph Swanson to the University of Illinois Extension. Appointment of Dave Barron to the Kankakee County Convention and Visitors Bureau. Appointment of Robert G. Parkinson to the Kankakee Township Fire Protection District. Reappointment of David Sargent to the Caberry Area Fire Protection District. The reappointment of Donald B. Forberger to the Moments and Yellowhead Drainage District. The appointment of Christy Slaby to the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee.
Alrighty, we have a motion in the second. That's a roll call. Yes, that's a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under Executive Committee, if we could read the title into the record, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the county board chairman to sign an agreement with CSL Bearing related to road usage along Route 50.
Can I get a motion to approve first? Mr. Zenz, second. Mr. Kinzinger, is there any questions about this? Went through it pretty exhaustively in finance. Okay. I tell you what, let's do a roll call just to make sure in case that agreement involves any spend. Should be minimal. It should just be the electricity for the traffic lights, but I just want to make sure we have a roll call, which is, what do we say, 75 bucks a year? Something like that. It's not much. Just, hey, dot the I's, cross the T's.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye, motion carries. If we could get the next item read into the record, just the title, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the county board chairman to sign a letter of understanding with the Illinois Department of Transportation regarding permit application L-16410, Illinois Route 50 and CSL Bearing / Lowe's entrance.
Motion to approve that one too. Mr. Eckhoff, second to Mr. Legess. Any questions about this one? Alrighty, this one should be a voice vote. There is no fees associated with this. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under PZA, we have the, read the title only. Thank you.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, regarding the purchase of service agreement with Show Bus to operate the county's rural general public transportation service, state fiscal year 2020.
Motion to approve this one. Be Mr. Payton, second, Mrs. Peters. Any questions about this agreement? It's kind of housekeeping every year. We do that. Oh, yeah. Really?
You're taking on obligation. Minimal, but you're taking on, right? If CSL doesn't do the construction, the county's cut.
It's just for the permit, though.
But you're taking on an obligation for the county.
Yeah, if you say so.
I'm saying so.
You went to Notre Dame. He went to Notre Dame, so I'm going to listen to him. So, so let me finish this activity. I'm going to circle back to the other one. So, do we have a motion and a second on this one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're right to the point of roll call on this one, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is for the show bus agreement. So roll call vote, please.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff. I'm sorry. Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo. Mr. Featherling. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Now circling back to 81. Mr. Quinn, do you want to explain your thoughts on that one a little
Yeah,
bit?
I'm just erring on the side of caution here. It's a permit to do the construction for that entrance that we've already talked about. It could, in the worst case scenario, result in spending money. So, just to err on the side of caution, I think let's do
So,
it.
but most of those covenants are under the CSL county agreement.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm being overly paranoid, but let's err on the side of caution on this, right?
Yep.
And I admitted it, yes.
Yes. Paranoid lawyer. Is that redundant? Sorry. Sorry. All right, so let's go ahead and do a roll call. Circle back on number 81. So I need a motion. Again, I think the original motion should stand.
Absolutely.
We should do a roll call vote on that.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo. Mr. Featherling. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, moving on to finance. If I could read that into the record, or you could read that into the record. Fine.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the County Board Chairman and County Sheriff to execute a grant from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration for the Drug Court Program.
That's good. Yeah. Thank you. So this is basically the SAMHSA grant that we received. So is there a motion to approve that? Mr. Carrico, Mr. Lear, with a second. Any questions about any of that? It's all federal money passed through to us to pay other providers. So it is, don't foresee any other expense beyond the staff in the state's attorney's office. So there is other expense that will come, but that's in the form of budgets. So, all right, roll call vote.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to 84. You can read that title.
Ordinance of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, establishing civil fees and criminal and traffic assessments to be charged by the clerk of the circuit court.
Alrighty, a motion to approve that. We talked about this in criminal justice and then again in finance. So motion to approve. See, Mr. Swanson, second, Ms. Dunbar. It's the state telling us what we got to do. So no matter how you might be compelled to vote no. I'm not telling you how to vote, but man, Mr. Snipes.
The marriage in court is only $10. You know, generally you can go to a church, you had 100 or 150, but that's the max that you kind of allow. I mean, even $25.
Where are you looking, Mr. Snipes? Sorry.
I'm looking on page 5, performing a marriage in court. You know, you would think that's like 25 or maybe, because that's kind of like the growing norm now. But it's like it's only performing a marriage in court, $10.
That specific fee, I can't remember exactly if it was in the statute verbatim like that or not, but that's overall, that's exactly what I did.
I'm getting a head nod from the circuit clerk. That was in the statute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We will take gifts, though.
Yes, absolutely.
Another 20 for our trouble, you know. Jeez. All right. Any other questions on that one, Mr. Eckhoff?
So this is the new state law, correct?
Yes. And June 1st?
July.
July 1st. So this will obviously cause us to I don't know if we're going to be able to adjust budgets right off the beginning. We're going to have to kind of guesstimate what it's going to cost and kind of tie things up later. It's not going to be cheap, and it's going to impact special funds, general funds for the circuit clerk's office, everything. It's the sheriff's office on, you know, the court security. I mean, this is far-reaching.
My office, the public defender's office.
Yeah, public defender, state's attorney, all of them that depend on those fees to be able to operate. So then it comes back to us to figure it out. That's why we make the big bucks, right? Sarcasm. Okay, do we have a motion in a second? Alrighty, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lejess.
Nay.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Nay.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Nay.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Regrettably, aye. Moving on to 85. You could read that into the record.
Ordinance of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, regarding amendments to the combined annual budget and appropriation ordinance for Kankakee County, Illinois, 2018-2019 fiscal year.
All right, a motion to approve that, please, is in order. Mr. Lear, second. Mr. Payton, any specific questions about the amendments? Anyone? Give you a minute to look at it. Right. So this is, if you see on, well, there's not a page marked, but it's right after the ordinance. It's basically for the Wind Farm Road project. We got the money in. We have to amend how that's done on the budget. So it's really just housekeeping at that point. Alrighty, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lejess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to the next item. It's the 2017 United Healthcare rebate disbursements. We don't have a resolution on this because this is just something that came out of finance, but we will need the board. It's basically rebating back to employees money because of the Affordable Care Act. The health insurance company did not perform up to the ACA standards as far as member funding, if that's the right way to put it.
It's medical cost spent.
Cost spent per employee. So we had to take that money. We figured out how it went. Only current employees get the money, and it's a whopping $5.39. That's taxable income that's going on those employees' checks. So it's going to take a motion to approve that and a roll call vote. Motion to approve, Mr. Eckhoff. Second, I'll go with Mr. Featherling this time. And it's a one-time deal. I don't, if it happens again, then it'll probably be 2 years before we can get it back on. We didn't want to cut checks, so we're just putting it on their paycheck. So roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lejess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under highways and buildings, the concurring resolution, we could make Dan read the whole thing, or a motion to waive the reading and approve as written. Mr. Featherling, a second. Mr. Payton? All right. I appreciate that very much, and so does Dan. Roll call vote, please.
I was clearing my throat, man. Mr. Lejess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Alrighty. If we could just read the title of the next one into the record.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the county board chairman to sign local agency agreement for federal participation and appropriating matching tax funds for resurfacing County Highway 9.
Alrighty, motion to approve, Mr. Eckhoff. Second, Mrs. Peters. Any questions about this one? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lejess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. The next item is a addition to our policy and procedure manual. Get to that real quick.
From the very back.
Very back, okay. So it's not something that is a resolution, but it's something that we went through an executive. We first need a motion to approve that, if I could, the badge policy. Mr. Featherling and Dunbar. I know who you are, I apologize. Well, behind Steve, yeah. So basically, it's just we had a policy on the books. It was old, it was kind of outdated, nobody was wearing badges. We discussed this, went through department head meetings. So, you know, I don't know that we need a roll call vote. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and do we have a motion in a second? Okay. I'm sorry?
Are we amending this policy?
Yeah, we added to it. Yeah,
We're adding to the policy?
Yeah,
So
we
it's
did.
going
We added
to
to
our-
it. Yep, we added to the policy.
Okay, yeah, we'll take the,
What are we adding?
we adding the language here, dealing with the identification of badges, policies and procedures.
We headshot photos, who's supposed to wear them. It's basically for 189. You know, because of all of our swipe cards getting in and out of the building and trying to limit the amount of keys that are floating around here for the building. People leave our employment, losing keys, whatever. So we're bringing that way down. It's easier to turn off a card than it is to replace all blocks.
Is $10 our cost?
I'm sorry?
Is $10 our cost?
No, $10 the employee cost if they lose their card.
No, I'm talking about that's our cost to have to replace it if they lose it.
Yeah, that's the number that we're going with. Yeah, yeah, we had to pay for the machine. I'm sure it's
Right.
residually goes down over time once everything's paid for, but there's still the cost of a sleeve and the time of the people to do it.
Okay.
So it's definitely we're gonna inflate or fix the budget with $10 at a time. So any other questions?
Yeah,
Ms. Polk? Yes.
Do we have to have an identification?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yep. And that was going to be after we were done with this. I was going to encourage everybody to come see us upstairs because we're going to take your picture. Yes. Or you can say the problem is that it's part of the policy as of today. So before the next meeting, I would say please come see us, and we just need to take your picture against like a white colored wall so the resolution's nice. Or if you want to do that at home, have somebody take a cell phone picture and email it to Anita. That's what we did around. Everybody can just take their own picture and send it in. Glamour shots. I know you've got some, Mr. Zenz. We can use some of those. Cowboy hat, you know. Whatever. We just need to get a decent picture of people with a nice white background that'll make it show up on a badge. And we're taking them today if you want to come up after this. So, but anyway, any other questions? Alrighty, voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Under old business. Gotcha. One opening on the BM Lewis Drainage District, one opening on the Grinnell Special Drainage District, one opening on the Gar Creek Drainage District, two openings on Mantino number 3 drainage, one on Mantino number 9 drainage, one on Minnie Creek drainage, one resident open on the Kankakee County Housing Authority Board, one opening on the ZBA, one opening on the Kankakee River Valley Forest Preserve, two openings on the Kankakee County Board of Health, two openings on the Kankakee County Ethics Commission, and that would be it for that. So, let's see here. Let's see if there's anything else before we go into executive session to review closed meeting minutes. I'll just, we'll mention the other stuff at new business, but there's just a couple things to mention. So I need a motion to go into executive session for the reasons stated, please. Mrs. Parker, second. Mr. Swanson. Motion to go in, roll call vote, please. Coming out some voice.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Stop that. We'll be in executive session in a moment. Please stick around. A word from our sponsor, yeah. I'm sorry? Microphone's on. Are we live here? All right, we're back from executive session. All members that were in executive session are present. For reasons, as advised by council, where there are no executive session minutes to release at this time.
Because of pending litigation.
Because of pending litigation. Reset. All right. So under new business, I just had a couple of things, and we'll take it from the board. First of all, it was mentioned about Mr. Washington. He had a fall and an injury, so he won't be here for a little while. We're going to try to set him up with video conferencing here over the next day or so. Hopefully your thoughts and prayers are with him. I did want to mention to the board that it doesn't look like we're going to need an early distribution from the taxes this year, which is a very good thing. We were hovering around Nick's office, the previous treasurer's office, for when they first got their checks in all the time, and I think we're going to be able to make it this time. Knock on veneer. So when we'll see how that goes, but it looks like we're going to make it. Steve is he's a smiley guy these days, Mr. McCarty. And then I did want to mention that this is our swan song with Graham Quinn as our trusted advisor. Today is his last full board meeting.
Last full board meeting, yeah.
And he is going to work for, I'll let him announce.
I'm going to the Attorney General's office up in Chicago. I'm working out of the Thompson Center. I'm going to be in their General Law Bureau, so similar to what I'm doing now, but without this component, right? I don't advise any state agency. It would be more of the litigation side of the current role. So, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you all.
So we are going to miss you. Just so you know, he's worked very closely with the board since he's been here. He's been a very trusted resource, very thorough, committed, and I hope I speak for the board saying we valued that and the work you did for us. And then since you're going to the litigation side, I hope we never see you again. I am just kidding. But yeah, now is there any new business for the rest of the board here to bring up? Old business, Mr. Lear.
In regard to the policy on badges, do we have a timeline on where that's going? Thursday, I think, of this week. That's when the doors will be locked electronically, and you'll have to swipe to get in the mornings. And they will be open when, I believe, 7 o'clock.
7 to 6, I believe. Is what
Yeah, 7 to 6 is when they're going to be open. And then the locks are being changed on the front door. New keys are being distributed tomorrow and the next day. So it's now.
So when do we pick up our badges?
You guys are okay because you're never usually here before 7 o'clock, I wouldn't think.
True.
But the policy says you've got to be wearing them while you're in the building. A lot of that has to do with shooter incidents, like who's should be here, who shouldn't be here. That's part of it. Anita, back there.
In talking to Trent, the board members are the only ones left that we have to do the IDs for, and he didn't want them piecemeal. He wants them all at once. So I've got 6 photos. So as soon as I get the other 22, then we'll send them all at once, and it'll take him a couple days to fill it out. So hopefully, the sooner you get them to me, and then we can get them passed out.
You can go take them right now if you guys want. She'll put them on her phone and send them right over there. So, Mr. Smith?
These are being put by the sheriff's office.
Yeah, on the badges out there. Yeah.
Okay, several of us already have photos on file.
Well, that's true. If Mr. Smith has a photo on file there, so I think Mr. Fairfield does as well.
I'll check on those.
Yeah, we should have something.
Yeah. If he looks like a 20-year-old, I don't know.
Yeah. I almost made a hair comment. I'm not going to do that. No. Yeah.
There was hair. Some of them have in the wanted folder, right?
The wanted? Yeah.
That's in the post office.
Yeah, it's post office.
Get it from the post office.
So any other questions about that old new business? Motion to adjourn, Mr. Wajess. Second? Oh, choices. I think it was Ms. Dunbar. Yeah,
I think it
that's
was.
her name,
Yeah.
right? Ms. Dunbar? Yeah. Okay.
You can see her?
Yeah. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Have a good day.